Welcome back to the channel. In today's video we are moving on to the next episode in my category breakdown series, and in today's video we are taking a look at Best Original Score. Now if you're new to the series, I'm going to have this video in a playlist with all of the other episodes so far in this award season, but basically all this is just for the last 3 years, I've taken a look at every single individual category at that year's Oscar ceremony. We've just taken a look at the category and completely broken it down to where we talk about all 5 of the films that are nominated in the category, we talk about why the film itself got nominated in that specific category, then we talk about like the individual artists that were nominated alongside that film. So in today's video, for example, we're going to talk about all of the composers, talk a little bit about their work history and their previous Oscar nominations, and then at the end of the section, I'm going to give you my personal rank on a scale of just ranking them 1 to 5 on how I would rank them in terms of like how I would vote for them, how I prefer them, and then I'm also going to give you my 1 through 5 ranking on my predictions for how likely it is that I think they win the Academy Award on March 15th. And without further ado, let's take a look at the nominees.
Begonia.
Composed by Jerskin Fendrix. This is Jerskin Fendrix's second Oscar nomination. He was also nominated in 2024 for Poor Things, also directed by Yorgos Lanthimos. Begonia is also nominated for Best Score at the BAFTA Awards. Now, I didn't look into this, so I don't know for sure, but I'm pretty confident that just both Poor Things and Begonia are the only films I've seen that are scored by Jerskin Fendrix. Again, I could be wrong, maybe there's something else I'm missing, but when Begonia was, when I was looking at it as potentially predicting it for the nomination and stuff, I remember kind of looking back and thinking, okay, well, I remember his score from Poor Things very vividly. It was this very kind of weird and unique. It was just like so different than everything else in the category, and so I think like Poor Things score really kind of stood out for how unique and kind of just like different the sound was of it. And so I kind of ended up going with that, as my prediction here, and ended up getting right. And then I was thinking about it, and I was like re-listening to this score, and it's definitely like it's got some those quirky moments, but this is like it feels a lot more normal of a film score, I would say, than what Poor Things' score felt like. Again, this is also just kind of off the top of my head. It's been 2 years since I've listened to the Poor Things score, so I don't remember it super well, but I do remember like that just really standing out as kind of this quirky and like weird thing, and then all of a sudden this kind of feels a little bit more normal, but is still very, very good work. And I think the thing for Begonia that, again, all of these, I mean, that's obviously this is part of the score. This is what a good original score needs to do for a film, is provide emotional context and provide kind of almost like the guidance of like how you're supposed to feel, and sometimes that's to the detriment or to the benefit of some films, but it's supposed to kind of lead you and carry you through kind of the emotions of the film. And what Begonia does in this film specifically is there's a whole lot of the score that is set up in a way that like it helps build the tension of the scenes, or kind of build the mystery in a sense of some scenes. Like I think of, kind of like the opening scene of the film, or the last scene of the film in particular, that those emotions that it's kind of doing, it's kind of setting up this maybe more, like at the beginning it's just kind of the bug on the flower, and it's kind of this little bit more peaceful, and at the end, without, spoiling anything, because obviously this is a film I really don't want to spoil for you, but the end of the film, it kind of, the score, it really kind of is setting the tone, almost like this more, not quite, maybe a little more peaceful, but just kind of this, like, easier, breezy kind of score to listen to at the end. But then everything kind of in the middle is like, during the intense scenes, like the score is kind of get you there. It kind of is building up that tension, kind of building up the angst of the scene. But then there's a lot of scenes where, it's where you're kind of trying to understand, when you put yourself in the Emma Stone's character's shoes, and you're trying to just kind of understand what's going on, and the score kind of leads you into more of this, like, mysterious, like, it's really just kind of, again, leading you there with the emotions. And so I think that obviously that's what a good score does, is carry you through the emotions of the film, and Begonia absolutely does that. For my personal rank, I'm putting Begonia in 4th, and for my prediction, I'm putting it in 5th.
Frankenstein.
Composed by Alexandre Desplat. This is Alexandre Desplat's 12th Oscar nomination. He won in 2018 for The Shape of Water, also directed by Guillermo del Toro, and in 2015 for The Grand Budapest Hotel. He was nominated in 2020 for Little Women, 2019 for Isle of Dogs, 2015 for The Imitation Game, 2014 for Philomena, 2013 for Argo, 2011 for The King's Speech, 2010 for Fantastic Mr. Fox, 2009 for The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, and 2007 for The Queen. Frankenstein was nominated for Best Score at the BAFTAs, the Critics' Choice Awards, and the Golden Globes. Now, over the next two films that we're going to talk about here, I'm going to point out something that I found kind of interesting, that what I do when I'm doing these category breakdowns, I watch all of these films and I watch the score in the context of the film, and then I also separate it from the film, and I just go on Spotify and I just listen to the entire soundtrack on its own. And it's kind of interesting when I do that because I don't necessarily know, like, when I'm listening to a score on its own, should I, like, weigh that more? Or should I obviously weigh it more in context of the film? Like, obviously that feels like a little bit more. But I will say that this is one of those films that Frankenstein, I enjoyed the score, well, good enough on when I was watching it in the film. Like, it's a longer film, there's a lot of score, there's a lot of scenes where there's maybe not a lot of dialogue, and so again, it is that score that's kind of carrying you through emotional moments. There's a couple scenes toward the end of the film where Frankenstein is talking to the creature, and it's kind of this emotional moment, but the score is still kind of there in the background, and it's very beautiful. It's very touching. There's a lot of these moments where the score is recognizable, and I was noticing it, but at no point during the film was I ever kind of like listening to the score and thinking that was a highlight, until I isolated it and was just listening to the playlist, just listening to the score, and all of a sudden there was just multiple numbers in the score where all of a sudden I'm listening and I'm thinking like, whoa, this is like way better than like I was remembering or giving it credit for in the film. Like, it's just not something that felt like super memorable in the film because there's other things that I'm paying attention to, but then all of a sudden, like, on its own, I was like, this is very beautiful. And so this is actually one of those films that's kind of got a little bit of a boost for me after listening to it isolated. But the thing again that I think Frankenstein, what you're seeing in for all of these films, Frankenstein, Hamnet, Sinners, One Battle After Another, like all these films that are nominated across, I guess Sentimental Value is also in that bunch. The films that are nominated for like 8, 9, 10 plus Oscars is a lot of the categories that they're in multiple because they kind of nailed the one thing that made all of these things excel. And so I think for Frankenstein, for them, it is very specifically the nailing kind of the time, nailing the vibe, kind of the, again, gothic kind of Victorian era vibe that they're going for. The score really plays a huge part of that. And it's for some films like Marty Supreme, for example, is not nominated here, so not really going to get to talk about it. But like what they do with their score is it's almost like the opposite, where they're kind of going against like the vibe or like the era, the time, and they're doing something kind of unique and different, and that's cool on its own. But I think when you get a film like Frankenstein, where it's like everything, whether it's the production design, the costume design, the score, the cinematography, everything is bleeding it into this same singular style, the same singular focus of the film. And when all of those, firing on all cylinders like that, I think it's kind of making it this complete thing where it's a film that gets 8+ Oscar nominations. And the score, I think, is just very beautiful. Alexander Desplat, his score for Little Women is one of my favorite scores of all time. So I've always been a fan. And so, again, listening to the Frankenstein score kind of isolated from the film almost just made me kind of love and appreciate the score more than I did initially just watching the film. For my personal rank, I'm putting Frankenstein in third, and for my prediction, I'm putting it in third.
Hamnet.
Composed by Max Richter, this is Max Richter's first Oscar nomination. The most recent film he composed was Johan Renk's Spaceman in 2024, and he has released 14 studio albums. Hamnet is nominated for Best Score at the BAFTAs, the Critics' Choice Awards, and the Golden Globes. And this is one where it kind of is the opposite of what happened with Frankenstein, where when the first couple times that I've seen Hamnet, I was just kind of blown away by the score. There's multiple moments. There probably isn't as much score in Hamnet as there is in like a lot of the other films here in this category, but the scenes that it is used, it's very beautiful. There's, I think of the scene where Paul Mescal's character is kind of, I guess I don't want to say a spoiler, but it's after a big thing happens and he's kind of isolated and he's kind of alone, kind of on that like bridge or kind of like right by like the water, and he's like looking into the water. It's when he first says like the "to be or not to be" line. And so it's like the score that's playing there. It's just very beautiful. There's a lot of moments in this score that or in the film where I was like, I just love this score. It's very peaceful. It's very beautiful. It's very kind of this singular, again, kind of focused score. There's not some of these scores have multiple songs that provide different emotions, like I was just talking about with Begonia. This, it's very similar. Every sound, like, it's a very uniform sound across the board. And I really loved it in context of the film, and so this was higher up on my personal rank. It, wasn't the top of the list, but I had it a little bit higher up. And then I listened to it kind of isolated, and it is beautiful. Like I still like it, but it's one of those where, like, kind of just listening to it isolated from the film, I definitely liked it a little bit less. Like, it was harder to put it above a Frankenstein. So, like, that was one of the flips I made. Was I was like, well, Frankenstein's definitely better than this, and I guess you can tell that it's you can probably guess where it's going based on the way I'm talking and what I've already shown in the ranking. But yeah, it is very, very interesting in that sense where it just kind of felt like it served better in the film as opposed to listening to it as like an individual listening experience, which, to be fair, is probably how I should grade it. I should probably lean way more because that's the whole point of it. It's an original score for the film. Like, you should kind of judge it and grade it based on how it works in the film as opposed to isolating it individually. But in terms of just personal rank, it just kind of ended up sliding a little bit. And I do think that there's kind of two different other things that I kind of want to point out here. One being that listening to it isolated, the best moment of the score is when On the Nature of Daylight plays. And that's kind of hard to put that in and give the film credit for an original score when you're putting in an already existing piece of music that has been used plenty of times in cinema history. Even though I still like its inclusion in the film, I like that moment. I like the whole Globe Theater thing, which clearly isn't a lot of people's favorite. There's a whole lot of people that kind of attack that scene on Twitter, even though I like it. And that leads me into the second point, where I kind of talked about I believe it was in the Begonia section where I was talking about how the music is kind of dictating your emotions and it's leading you a certain way based on the music. And I said how that can be a thing that's either beneficial or a negative. For me, I think in Hamnet it's still beneficial. Like, there's very few films that ever have a score where it's very heavy and is like leading you into a specific emotion where I'm gonna think that that's bad. But I can understand why some people might think that way, and I've heard that criticism, I've heard that discussion about Hamnet specifically, where it feels like the score's kind of hand-holding you a little bit to kind of get you to these emotions. For me, I don't think it's necessarily that bad. I do think it is just a part of the film, like it's part of the score is just part of what gets you to that emotional climax. And so for me, I do love it, but interestingly enough, kind of isolating it away from the film, I did kind of like the score a little bit less than I was expecting to in terms of my personal ranking. For my personal ranking, I'm putting Hamnet in 5th, and for my prediction, I'm putting it in 4th.
One battle after another.
Composed by Jonny Greenwood. This is Jonny Greenwood's 3rd Oscar nomination. He was nominated in 2022 for The Power of the Dog, and in 2018 for Phantom Thread, also directed by Paul Thomas Anderson. One Battle After Another is nominated for Best Score at the BAFTAs, the Critics' Choice Awards, and the Golden Globe Awards. Now again, obviously you saw how the board was laying out. You understand that we're getting to the heavy hitters here at the bottom of this category. One Battle After Another, to me, I will admit, I guess not admit, but the other film that is the last film we're going to talk about in the category came out first, so I saw that first, and I already obviously loved the score and was familiar with it. But when I saw One Battle After Another 5 months later or so, I can't remember exactly how long between those two films, but when One Battle After Another came out, I remember watching that in theaters, listening to the score, hearing it, and thinking, there is absolutely, no way this doesn't win score, right? This is so incredible, because this score is so unique in the sense that, and you're going to see so far in, the 3 previous, I'm not the biggest music person in terms of, I can tell you every single instrument that's being used or different music lingo and stuff like I'm just not into music quite like that. I throw music on and I listen to it and it's all good, it's hard for me to kind of break things down. But with One Battle After Another, the things that I can break down is just kind of the frenetic, different style of it, in the sense where there is multiple scenes where it's a very normal kind of composed score, kind of a piano-based score, and then all of a sudden you get to the couple of those numbers where it just sounds like Jonny Greenwood is just hitting a bunch of keys, or it feels like, maybe it almost sounds like in a sense in some of them where you have two hands on the piano, you're playing, and it seems like maybe he's doing one like normal, and then another hand is in like double time, and so it just feels like it's so like just the energy. I'm trying to think of like the plucky is probably the best word I can come up with, where it's just all of a sudden it feels like these notes are just like wrong and they're out of place. But as you listen, so the first couple moments you're like, oh, that was wrong, like that missed that note. But then as it keeps going, you're just like, oh no, this is the style, this is the score. And so there's a whole lot of the score that is like that. It's just this very unique and fascinating kind of just listening experience as you're listening to this score as it's taking place. You're just like, oh, this is so kind of again unique and just very interesting, and it really kind of, for me at least, kind of put me on edge. It's one of those that, we talk about the score for Begonia, where some of the score, like, it's intentionally kind of getting you a little anxious and it's getting you a little nervous, it's building the suspense. This does the exact same thing, but in a different way, where it's not necessarily because it's this beautiful piece of music that's building to something. This is just because it's frenetic, it's chaotic, it's the keys feel like they're out of place, but at the same time it's beautiful as you're listening to it, because it's like all of the keys that sound like they're out of place, they're at least kind of still in a good progression. Again, I don't know all of the music terms, but it feels like that is like what those keys are supposed to be doing. That's what it sounds like. What those are supposed to sound like. So it really just builds this kind of chaotic, frenetic energy during those specific numbers. There are multiple other numbers, kind of like the theme that plays at the beginning, the first kind of song. Like, it's a very kind of simple, again, kind of piano-based score, but it's very beautiful. It's in rhythm, and so I think when you have those numbers, it really kind of sets you up for something. And then when you get the fun, chaotic, plucky notes of the other part of the score, that again is just kind of building that tension, building the suspense of the chase scene, or pretty much the entirety of Bob trying to get to the rendezvous point. Everything that's playing in that is just all fun. It's very I guess it's beautiful, but beautiful isn't necessarily like the main word I would use for this. It's just fun is really just the best way to describe the score. So I had a blast with it, even if it doesn't quite live like when I was watching in theaters thinking there's no way this doesn't win, right? Even though that probably isn't going to happen, I still had a great time with the score. For my personal ranking, I'm putting One Battle After Another in second, and for my prediction, I'm putting it in second.
And Sinners.
Composed by Ludwig Göransson. This is Ludwig Göransson's fifth Oscar nomination. He won in 2024 for composing Oppenheimer, and in 2019 for composing Black Panther, also directed by Ryan Coogler. He has also been nominated twice in the Best Original Song category, this year for I Lied to You, and in 2023 for Lift Me Up from Black Panther Wakanda Forever. Sinners won for Best Score at the BAFTAs, the Critics' Choice Awards, and the Golden Globe Awards. And maybe a little bit of a hot take here, but this Ludwig Göransson guy is pretty good at composing music. And so I think it's one of those, again, when I watched Sinners for the first time, I saw it once in theaters and had a blast. And I don't want to say that I forgot the score, like, that it's like this forgettable score, because obviously it's not. But it was just one of those that over the months, I kind of... maybe I was also just kind of slower to the recognition that Sinners was going to dominate, in Oscar nominations, because it came out so early. I kind of thought, like, oh, maybe it'll hang on and get 5 or 6 nominations, something like that. But, I didn't think necessarily that it was going to break the all-time record, right? And so I didn't know necessarily if score was going to come along, even though it absolutely should have. And so I just remember listening to the One Battle After Another score, thinking, like, this was so unique and so beautiful, like this has to be the front runner. And then during the next I guess it would have been in, because I watched Sinners a bunch over the last like month or so probably would have been like in October, shortly after One Battle After Another came out, I rewatched Sinners again, and it was on that rewatch I was like, nope, never mind, like this is winning, this is obvious, like it's Ludwig Göransson, it's a previous winner. Fascinating enough that he's won. After he wins this, it'll be 3 nominations, 3 wins in the score category, and then 3 nominations and 3 losses in the song category. Kind of fascinating how that's turning out for him, probably. But yeah, I mean, it's a very, the score, this is the film that the music is the most important part. Like, it is, everything else, the score is very much kind of like an integral and just kind of like a part of making the film complete, like it's kind of the bow on top. The score for Sinners is like actually just integral to the film. The music, the score, the sound, the rhythm, the beats, like everything that is being baked into it, it's all just so important for specifically the juke joint scene, which I don't want to say the scene, like it is not majority, but quite a bit of the film is just kind of here at the juke joint, and so it's like everything that's happening there. Like the music is such an important part of that, and the score specifically. But then there's also plenty of score before and after, and the thing to where it is kind of like also part of like leading you to making you feel like certain emotions kind of at the beginning and the end of the film. But also, again, it's just so integral to the actual story itself. So much of the story is centered around music, around Miles Caton's character being a musician, playing his guitar, like playing the score. It's one of the only scenes or the only films where you're going to see like a character actually playing the score, as it's playing in the film, and then obviously that score can lead into a couple of the musical numbers. There's just so much here. It's just the most beautiful, the kind of the blues style score. It's the most, I would say, of the category. I guess One Battle After Another is pretty unique, but it's right up there with One Battle After Another in terms of like the most unique scores in the category. So just had a whole blast listening to this, and this is also the best score. I think it's the best in the film, usage in the film, but it's also the best just listening to it on its own. This is the film in this category. I guess Frankenstein, again, as well, has a couple numbers, but I think, like, the entirety of the Sinner score, I could just throw that on in the background while I'm doing something and just, like, be listening to that score. Like, it is so beautiful. It works well in the film, works isolated. Ludwig Göransson is going to continue to dominate this category. Like, he's kind of the, I guess, new prodigy, really, of this category, because everything he does, it's so unique from previous work. Like, he tailors everything specifically to director's taste and to the film, like what the film requires. He's able to deliver that every single time. He's an excellent composer, and he delivers phenomenal work here in Sinners. For my personal rank, I'm putting Sinners in first, and for my prediction, I'm putting it in first. And that's it. Thank you so much for watching this video. Let me know down below in the comments what you think of these scores, how would you rank them, and also just what you're rooting for to win in the category. Let me know all of that down below. And if you'd like to like this video and then subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future episodes in this series or any of the other series that I have going on my channel, I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.